The horror movie genre, when done right, it's some of the best filmmaking out there. So rich and so great, and with the many subgenres, there's so much good stuff to dive into. And I talked about some of that stuff in the previous list when I talked about my favorite horror movies of this year. But now it's time to talk about the flip side, the stuff that I absolutely fucking hated, to say the least. I'm John Rhythm with my 10 least favorite horror movies of 2021 with some honorable mentions. Let me know your least favorite horror movies in the comments, please. So, full disclosure, in case you did miss the previous list, I wasn't able to see nearly as many movies like I saw last year when I saw 138 movies released in that calendar year. Only 78 movies this year, but I saw some good ones and I saw some bullshit that I'm going to talk about here, and the full reviews of all these movies are up on the Real Honest Movie Reviews playlist, so let's crack on with the honorable mentions. Aquarium of the Dead. It wasn't nearly as much fun as I thought it would be. Even though, of course, the Asylum was going to make a movie like this, it should have really delved just even more into the comedy route and just had more fun with it. And it just was kind of there, and that was a bit disappointing. So, no one, but then again, what can I expect, from a movie called Aquarium of the Dead? Probably shouldn't have had my expectations anywhere except on the bottom of the ocean floor, where all those weird glowy-eyed creatures are around, and all those squids are around that are going to fucking kill you, if the pressure doesn't kill you first. Then no one gets out alive. I have no idea why this movie exists. It was so fucking ridiculous. What's in the box? The woman in the window. How much is that woman in the window? Can we get her a bed or script? Man, if you saw the cast for this movie and then actually watched the movie, I'm sorry, it was fucking disappointing. The Sinners. The Sinners made no goddamn sense. No goddamn sense at all. I remember watching it and thinking, who the fuck made this? Why did it have such a weird tonal shift? Why did it try to be horror, despite the fact the only horrifying thing was that it got made? And stay out of the fucking attic. They should have stayed out of the fucking studio that they were making this movie in. Now, number 10, Separation. Yeah, neat a little idea, and it didn't end up working at all. And it even hinted at a sequel. It also made no sense. It was about a mother and a father and the obvious fact of who the actual villain was, because there weren't that many, characters fleshed out or otherwise in this. Like, of course you could figure out who the fuck it was. And then there were weird creatures that were there and then not there, and it just really had no right to exist. And then we get to number 9, Jacob's Wife. Hey, CM Punk was in this for about 3 scenes. And it also was a terrible twist on the vampire genre. It made that this one was another one where it's like, it was from the same guy that made Girl on the Third Floor, which right there should have told me that I should have not had any expectations. I probably shouldn't have watched this, but whatever. I figured it can't be worse than Girl on the Third Floor, and while it wasn't, it was still pretty fucking shit. Then we go to number 8, Dead and Beautiful. I hate every character in this. Maybe that was the idea, but it wasn't horrifying. It was stupid. And every character was dumb and bad at everything. And also the reveal, the third act twist, ended up making me just fucking laugh more than anything, which I don't think was their intention. Then we go to number 7. All My Friends Are Dead. All My Friends Are Dead. Running through my head. So, the main girl that was in Nobody Sleeps in the Woods tonight, don't worry, there's going to be more on the sequel in my least favorite movies of 2021 list a little bit later on. She was in this. And All My Friends Are Dead, I think, was trying to be a dark comedy. Here's the thing, it just ended up being a dark, bleak, depressing, boring piece of shit that wasn't any good. Because it was like people were caught in a time loop and doing the same goddamn stupid shit and everything. And also, Netflix needs to stop bringing over movies from Poland if they're not going to bring over better movies. And this was just really, really bad. And the conclusion of it, I mean, they tried to make it make sense, but then it's like, oh, let's go to alternate timelines. Let's just do this. Let's just do this stuff. And let's just make it infinitely worse. Also, the comedy didn't work at all. Number 6, The Swarm. It kind of reminds me of that whole thing from Bug with Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon, where it's like, they were all covered in sores and stuff like that. But it was that movie kind of on repeat, that scene kind of on repeat, and it was just really, really bad with a girl that, or a woman that was, had a big old locust farm and then was trying to find ways to keep the locusts happy when they found a taste for blood. Yes, bloodthirsty locusts. That actually would have been a better concept, and actually could have gone more with a throwback to the 70s monster movies when they tried to have, rattlers and Phase 4 and various other movies about various creatures that ended up killing. Nope, just ended up being really dumb with a woman that you had no reason to root for at all. I mean, from the very beginning. Even before all that bullshit happened with the locust, he didn't care because she was a terrible goddamn mother. Number 5, Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead was absolute goddamn dog shit, and quite frankly, shouldn't even qualify as a horror movie. It was horrifying. It was Zack Snyder's Slow-Mo the Musical. If they had cut the slow-mo, if they cut half the slow-mo out of this movie, it would have been an hour and 40 minutes. Batista tries. They put a lot of money into this, and it was dumb. It was really, really dumb, and it was overly long, overly boring, and even though there were some pretty girls in it, and they certainly tried to put a little twist on the zombie thing, it was way too fleshed out, ironically, and yet not fleshed out enough. And Zack Snyder probably should have his directorial license taken away, assuming directorial licenses are a thing. Maybe have it taken away, or maybe put some, creative reins on him. Put something on him. Do something where this goddamn dumb shit doesn't keep making movies that are really overly long when they don't need to be. Number 4, Malignant. I fucking hated Malignant. And I shouldn't have hated Malignant. I was looking forward to James Wan's new horror movie, his new horror epic, and even though I understand what they were trying to do, given the advertising and given how they were trying to make this movie, more serious in the beginning, they then ended up making it just totally bonkers and ridiculous and not even horrifying. And sure, some people like it. I hated it. And the whole twist as to what it ended up being actually made the movie even dumber. This turns out to be a little bit worse than Dead Silence, which is saying something because I hated Dead Silence. I hated Malignant, and I understand why some people like it. And sure, it could end up being a bit of a cult classic as far as like goofiness, but Malignant was really dumb. It was definitely something Malignant that you need to try to cut off and just let it become benign. So number 3, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Check out my review. I got some hate for it, even though I basically said if anybody likes it, that's totally fine. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City was dog shit, combining the aspects of 3 video games in not a very good way from the director of The Strangers Prey at Night and Storage 24. Oh boy, The Strangers Prey at Night. Whew. Number 2, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 2. Hate it. Absolutely fucking hate it. One of the biggest dog piles of shit that I've seen in a while. Polish filmmaking from Netflix. Look, Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight 1 was absolutely shit. They tried to expand on the lore of this, and it didn't work out at all. And it was less of a horror movie and more of just, like, I think trying to explore these people as characters. The horror aspect kind of got toned down a little bit, even though there was a particularly horrifying sex scene in the movie, and if you've seen it, you understand. It wasn't a very interesting story, and it just turned out to be dog shit. And number 1, the Candyman sequel. Here's why the Candyman sequel is the worst movie, because I'm basing this solely around what, how they did as a horror movie. Now, some of these movies will end up being on my least favorite movies list, maybe in a different order, because I'm focusing on them as movies and not straight horror. Candyman ended up being so goddamn obvious from the very beginning. If you knew the last name of the main character, you knew where the fuck this thing was going. And the problem is, it had no right to exist. You could argue, and I'm not even talking about the wokeness of it. I talked about this in my review. Because the first movie was kind of a whole thing about, like, racism and, hate crimes and stuff like that. And that was focused on in this one, too. And it was focused on a little bit in Candyman 2 and Candyman 3. That those movies are kind of sort of ignored, except for the New Orleans aspect is referenced, I think, like a little bit in this one. But this one just had no right to exist. It was a retread and a bad retread, and even though there's some good acting here, the guy playing the central character actually is a terrific actor. This just wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. It wasn't horrifying. It wasn't scary. The body horror stuff wasn't good. None of the villain that turns out to actually be the villain is fucking ridiculous with his, motivations, so it just ends up being really, really fucking dumb. So, those are my 10 least favorite horror movies of 2021. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.